I did a video recently about this because it seemed like the minute Tyron Woodley signed to fight Jake Paul, everyone started discrediting him and talking about him as if he was an easy fight. Oh, Jake Paul's not trying to get a real fight. And I was kind of like, have you seen what boxers do in their early fights? Tyron Woodley, to be fair to Jake Paul, for his fourth fight or whatever it is a fucking hell of a task, considering Tyron Woodley beat Darren Till the year Jake Paul started learning boxing. Like that, it's a crazy fight. But I wondered what your take on them two matching up would be.
Yeah, I always find it very disrespectful that people try to do that because, you know, even though I faced Tyron Woodley and I was able to defeat him, I still don't discredit what he did and what he's done. I mean, this man was a devastating striker, and I think still is. You know, I just think on the mental edge side of it, I think he's not there necessarily right now, but he's still Tyron Woodley, and it's a hell of a fight for Jake Paul. If Jake Paul is able to get through Tyron Woodley, then now he's in a realm where I can say, okay, now you know. You can make a case for me wanting to step in there and whoop your ass. You know, and people, of course, people start trying to discredit him. Oh, but he lost his last 3 fights and this and that. But did you see his last 15 before that?
Yeah. And he had a murderer's row in his defeats. He fought you. He fought Burns and
Burns.
Colby Covington.
Colby and Vicente Luque. I mean,
these are top 5 guys. Like along, I mean, you know, Colby and you are right, like up there with the greatest welterweights of all time. And I think Tyron Woodley in his prime, you could make an easy case of him being top 5 welterweight of all time. You know,
I agree, and that's the dangerous thing about this division that we're in is once you take that defeat, there's not rebound guys to where it's a lesser guy, let me bounce back. No, you've got another killer waiting for you and another killer waiting after that and another guy after that. And, you know, it's one of those tough situations to be in, but I still give him credit. Tyron Woodley is Tyron Woodley, and I'm intrigued. Now I have to watch that. Yeah. I got to watch that fight. You know, I absolutely kind of have to watch that fight now.
There's a lot of people calling Jake Paul a fake fighter. If he wins this fight, or if he even looks good at points, do you think that is enough for him to be considered a real fighter?
You know, no, I don't like that term of fake. He's a fake fighter. I don't like that term. A fake fighter is someone who's doing it in the movies, stunt. You know, just doing the moves, not really
Jean-Claude Van Damme
punches. You know, doing the moves and fights and not really actually engaging it.
Yeah.
You know, this young kid is still climbing inside the ring and doing it in front of thousands and thousands of people. So much respect with him being able to bare his soul like that. Yeah. You know, but I think what rubs people the wrong way is when you haven't faced the level of opposition, you know, as far as professionals, to really call yourself, you know, you're one of the best to do this. And then you're saying, oh, I'm one of the greatest. I'm good at this. When you start doing that, I think that's what rubs people the wrong way, to where people are, you know, starting to have that, you know, disdain for you. They're just like, oh, you're not a real fighter. You know, no, but he's a real fighter because he does get inside a boxing ring, put on the boxing glove, and actually compete. So for that, I will give him a real fighter. But as far as being an elite fighter like Tyron once was, no, he's not there yet.
Yeah, and Jake obviously is he's making mega money. That you know, I think the numbers came out for like the top 3 fighters financially in the last year, and like he was level with Anthony Joshua. So I think that is another thing, is people are looking at, you know, he fought Ben Askren, and I think other fighters are kind of frustrated when they see that. But I wonder if it's made people like yourself view the fight game a little differently and think more about content and getting your name out there and playing the game a bit more the way people like Conor McGregor have.
That's the tough part about my situation. So when I got into it, I didn't get into it necessarily for all of that. I didn't get into this because I wanted to be famous or I wanted to be known worldwide. I didn't get into it for that. I also didn't get into it for, necessarily for the money. I didn't get into it for that aspect. Of course I wanted the money, but it was just for the fact that I wanted to compete and I wanted to be the best at what I was doing. That was one of the main reasons why I got into it. So now when you get to see all these guys that are actually now there and making that money and doing that, it's almost like they cut the line. But I'm content with myself because that wasn't my goal. This is their goal, for them to be famous, for them to, to get, I'm a fighter, whether you're not, you haven't fought the level of opposition, of competition yet. For them to be famous and known all across, because he's making headlines, making a lot of headlines. Whether it's for the wrong reasons, it doesn't matter. He's making those headlines. But that wasn't my goal, so I don't really care about that aspect. But it does open eyes, like this is the amount of money that we can make. Why aren't we making that? And we're actually fighters who are fighting the level of opposition. Yeah. So in that aspect, yes, it does. It definitely does open a lot of eyes. But the majority of it, I'm not conflicted with it because I'm not. That wasn't my goal, is to be famous and in that aspect. No.
Speaking of you making money, Jake's actually been speaking out against Dana White a lot about you need to pay your fighters more, you need to make the John Jones and Ngannou fight, give the people what they want, sort of thing. I'm not going to put you in the position of asking, do you agree or whatever, because I respect that you've got a business situation. But I wondered if any other UFC fighters had mentioned that to you or talked about it in private, that he's bringing the guy to talk about that.
No, I mean, not necessarily that he's the guy that's talking about it. It's absolutely, it's what we all feel. To be honest, it's what we all feel. I don't know what you get paid, doing your podcasts and or whatnot, but it's never enough. Never going to be enough.
Yeah, true.
You give me 100,000 today. Guess what? By tomorrow, I already got 100,000. I want 1 million now.
Yeah.
I want to feel what that feels like. You give me 1 million. I want to feel what 10 million feels like. That's the story of man, especially any ambitious man, of course. That's what we do. We want to progress. So it's never going to be enough for me. Becoming a state champion wasn't enough. National champion's not enough. A world champion is still not enough. It's never going to be enough. So absolutely, in that aspect, yeah. Could we be making more? Absolutely. Absolutely. Should we make more? Yes. Give me all the money in the world. Let me have it all in my bank account. I guarantee you it's still not going to be enough.
Yeah.
So yeah, in that aspect, yeah. Should we get paid more? Absolutely. He's speaking out about it. But there's a lot of differences. There's a lot of things in the boxing world that a lot of boxers had to deal with. Mike Tyson being the main one to understand. There's a lot of situations and a lot of things that they had to deal with that is simplified with what we do. Completely simplified to where we just, this is our contract to fight. All right, sign. Got our managers and our trainers, and we go deal with it. To where in boxing back in the day, where you had so many hands that had to touch the promoter had to touch it, the manager had to touch it. Still
to this day, by the way, boxing is still shit for that. Like people pay all the attention to Floyd, Money Mayweather, and all of that. What they don't realize is that the grassroots of boxing, these guys are getting robbed and getting punched in the face at the same time. And you might make a few thousand, and before you know it, you're paying, you're left with a couple of thousand max when you walk away. The one thing that UFC does do, which I don't think they do get a lot of credit for, is at the grassroots, at the early stages, they pay those guys way better than boxing does. But it's about finding the balance, and that's obviously when you bring in a WME, they're going to want to take a lot of those profits. But Absolutely. On the Jake Paul thing, there was a lot of rumors that you guys might end up fighting. And I know due to the Conor and Floyd situation, the UFC would have to okay that. Have you had any talks? Because he claimed, I think someone from his side claimed there was talks. Has there been any discussion of any kind?
They threw it at us. They threw it at us a couple of times, but then we really start to really wasn't something that I wanted to entertain at first, because it's think about it. What does it do for me besides, potentially money? That's really the only upside in it. This guy's improving to where it's like, oh, you just beat a killer. Now your respect level has gone up. No. Even if this guy if he lands one punch on me, then it's like, oh, he landed a punch on you.
Yeah.
That did nothing for me except money wise. So then, they reached out here and there. And then it's like, we have to really start to dissect this. I didn't pay that much attention, but that's why that's why I pay him for. That's his job. To where he starts to, really dissect this now. These guys are saying the numbers that these guys are reporting that they're doing, it's not really the numbers they're doing. For you to come out and say, okay, you did 1 point something million pay-per-view buys, that's not true. Because my manager did his due homework to where he had to actually look at the real numbers and see if it makes sense. If you're doing 1 point something million buys and you're fighting nobody, now you get a chance to fight the real world champ, the reigning world champion. Now that we have to look at those numbers. And by looking at the numbers, my manager said this made no sense, because they're reporting numbers that's not necessarily true. That's not what they're really making. So if they're not making that, then the only upside of you even fighting him would have been the money. So if the numbers they're reporting is not really accurate, then there's really no upside, because that money's not going to be able to be, accounted for. So, there was no upside. It didn't make sense.
I appreciate you thinking that way, though, because other fighters, such as Floyd Mayweather, don't think that way. And it's funny that someone who's building a legacy right now is protecting it the way you are, whereas other people like Floyd maybe don't care as much and they just want the money and whatever. But I think part of the reason why fans like myself have really grown and warmed to you is because other fighters are so scarce with their appearances in the UFC sometimes, whereas you and Izzy, for example, you are constantly in there, and I can invest in you because you invest in yourself, and you care about getting in there, so that I can now care about you way more, because I know you can be my favorite fighter because I'm going to see you all the time, and I'm on the journey with you. Whereas these fighters who, I was a huge McGregor fan, for example. You see these guys once every 2-3 years sometimes, and it's like, it's not enough if you really want us to care. And I think you're going about your career very smartly. So I want to give you credit for that.